I was just thinking earlier about how opportunities in the 21st century are becoming more and more elusive to our people because they require a degree of socialization and communication and education that our people are not getting, don't have, aren't developing. And I guess that those are contributing factors to that projection that I used to speak about pretty frequently a few months ago. Us as a group, you know, melanated people as a group, by 2053, it's 28 short years from now, having a median household income of 0. That's such a threatening statistic. It's so threatening. And if I were a person that was inclined to use words like frightening, I would say that it's frightening. The idea that by 2053, just 28 years from now, so if you're 28, by the time you're 56, maybe not you, but your upstairs neighbor, your across the hall neighbor, your downstairs neighbor will not have any income whatsoever, no income. And I realized that when I shared that information, because few people have context for that kind of thing, because they just don't pay attention to the kinds of information sources that provide that sort of insight, they can't wrap their mind around that being a reality. It's like in their mind that can't be, because they think that what is now has always been. But just think back to, say, 1650 on this continent, and somebody with some foresight, somebody who had the ability to look at circumstances over here, circumstances over there, circumstances over there, none of which seemed to have any correlation or connection, except that they probably were all connected to Europeans. But other than that, you know, these Europeans were doing this over here, and those Europeans were doing something over there, and those Europeans were doing something over there. They weren't necessarily working together. But somebody back in 1650 who, for whatever reason, had the wherewithal and the ability to deduce reasonably and, you know, correlate things and so forth, and then project and predict the potential of how those unconnected people with those unconnected circumstances could, all those things coalesce into a condition that results in enslavement. And they told people in another 40 something years or so, we could all be in chains. And people were like, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean be in chains? Yeah, we could all be in chains and be enslaved by these people. Huh? What are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make... And it's because the average person didn't have the degree of education, information, or maybe even intellectual capacity to be able to wrap their mind around how these seemingly unrelated circumstances could come together and create a circumstance that would result in them being enslaved on their own land. You telling me that one day, 50 years from now, my land is not going to be my land and I'm going to be made to work on it for free? That doesn't make any sense. Based upon what I understand now, and the fact that I think that everything that is has always been and thus will always be, doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense is for people to think that something that exists now has always existed and will always exist because it exists now. That's simple-mindedness. Many people are, I would say the vast majority of people are inclined to simple-mindedness. Right? So, I don't know, maybe Tom won't be joining us today. I haven't heard from him. But if you compare that scenario to what I'm saying now about what is projected with a great deal more information and systems for determining things, and all sorts of historical information that's incorporated into those determinations, and as it relates to being able to project into the future and say, based upon where we are now and the way we're moving, this is where we'll be. That's more so the case now than it was in the 15th century, in the 1600s. Those people back in the 1600s who may have been told by somebody that we are on a trajectory where we could all end up being enslaved and subjugated by these people who keep coming over here and, be enslaved on our own land, and even have our histories taken from us and so forth, to the point where our descendants have no idea who they are or what they come from. People back then would have been like, you don't make no sense. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. How could that happen? How could we get there from where we are now? And an informed person, given the opportunity, could express exactly how. Well, sit your ass down, pay attention. I'm going to tell you how we can get from where we are now to what I'm talking about is potential 50 years from now, if we continue to operate the way we're operating now. But most people won't sit down for that. Not then, not now. But just like those people couldn't imagine in the 1600s how in a 50-year period they could end up being enslaved on their own land, people now find it difficult to believe that 28 years from now, the average person that they know, melanated person that they know, will, if we keep moving the way we're moving collectively, will have no money coming in at all, zero, by 2053. I think the thing that contributes mostly to that potential is the lack of a belief that that potential is possible, plausible. People don't typically make contingencies for things that they don't think are ever going to happen. They'll make plans to counter attacks that they don't think are ever going to come. I'll use this as an analogy, as I often do, my own personal experiences, which were largely in the streets. When I went into a town, in a city, in some state that I was not from, and I came here to get money. I came with my work and my material, and I'm not connected to anybody in that town. What do you think enabled me to basically infiltrate these cities, these neighborhoods in these cities? The fact that people didn't think that anybody would come from hundreds of miles away to a place that they knew no one and by themselves and set up shop. And if they did, they wouldn't come, by themselves or come with, 3-4 guys to a whole city of strangers. And because they didn't believe that that could happen, I was able to do it over and over and over again, because by the time they recognized that that is exactly what had happened, I had established my foundation, I had my roots established in the ground. I had set up infrastructure. I had created a fortress of people and other resources. And because they underestimated what a single person could do or a handful of people could do, they didn't have any counter plans. They didn't have any protection, because they figured nobody's going to do that, so why should I be prepared for that? So cats would just watch me pop up in their blocks, pop up in their neighborhoods, and just see this one guy who ain't dressed fancy, isn't wearing any jewelry or anything that makes it look like they've got anything. They didn't know I had endless access to high grade material that maybe 5% of the population had access to, because I didn't project it. I didn't look like it, whatever that looks like. How does that look? How does a threat look? A real threat. How does it look? That's a critical question that people didn't ask. It's a critical question that people don't tend to ask. The fact that we don't know what the weapons being formed against us look like is the reason why those weapons continually prosper against us, to the point where we have what we have going on now and are in a potential position where we could lose our we could lose our